In Beetlejuice 2, Lydia Dietz begins the story by giving an introductory speech from within an enormous, spooky mansion amidst a live stage show. Presenting herself as a psychic medium, she proposes investigating peaceful coexistence between the living and the deceased. Within the mansion, EMT and Judith, the distinguished guests, recounted their unsettling paranormal encounters. However, Lydia's sudden illness prompted an abrupt curtailment of the performance. Clearly distraught, she heads for the restroom. Anxiously, her boyfriend Rory trails after her, inquiring about her well-being. Lydia dismisses his concerns, attributing them to a difficult day and the strain of performing in 2 shows. Attempting to soothe her, Rory confiscated her medication, insisting it was unnecessary, but as her state deteriorated, he frantically retrieved the pills from the garbage and returned them. Subsequently, Lydia receives a call from her stepmother, Delia, requesting assistance. Here's where we learn the devastating news. Lydia's father is dead. A flashback, rendered in animation, reveals the event. He survived the plane crash, only to be tragically killed later by a shark. Lydia and Dia consider how to deliver the tragic news to Astrid. Deep within the city's underbelly, a young man sought guidance from an elderly janitor. Visibly weary of his monotonous existence, the old man languidly gestures toward a door before pausing to rest. Lost in his ennui, he commits a deadly error, electrocuting himself and finally meeting his demise. Subsequently, Dolores arrives dramatically, physically reassembling herself. Despite being dismembered and spread across various containers, she meticulously staples herself back together, regaining her signature, formidable appearance. Dolores seeks Beetlejuice and is interrogating the elderly gentleman we encountered. When he withholds the information she seeks, she drains his life force, leaving him an empty husk. Simultaneously, we meet Astrid during her school day. Lydia's attempts to contact Astrid regarding their grandfather's passing are unsuccessful. Therefore, Lydia and Delia must go to the school to communicate the news directly. During their journey, they reveal Charles's body is bound for Winter River. Once they reach the river, Delia informs SD of her grandfather's passing, pleading with her to offer her mother some compassion, particularly amidst this difficult period. SD, however, replies with callousness, speaking to Lydia. Now, let's shift our focus back to Beetlejuice and his eccentric ensemble. Wolf Jackson, a renowned actor with a clandestine life as an underworld enforcer, extends a cautionary message to him. He informs Beetlejuice that his name has come up in an active investigation, referring to the woman who pursued him, the one who rebuilt herself. Jackson cautions Beetlejuice, explaining the woman appears to be a soul-sucking entity driven by vengeance. He cautions Beetlejuice to remain inconspicuous, insisting his destiny is inescapable, yet Beetlejuice, predictably, disregards the advice entirely. The narrative revisits Lydia's troubled family during Charles's funeral service. The air hangs heavy with grief amidst family and friends. Following the ceremony, ASD confides in her mother, admitting that she sometimes feels death would be a welcome alternative to life. She further notes that she has not attended a funeral since her father passed away. Worried, Lydia urges Astrid to consult a therapist, sparking Astrid's fury, as she accuses Lydia of perpetually avoiding discussion of Astrid's father. With quiet composure, Lydia conveys her deep love for her father, clarifying that their connection had dissolved well in advance of the tragic event. Important information for individuals with ASD to understand. Simultaneously, in the underworld, the now decapitated Charles appears, seeking the waiting room. However, the soul sucker immediately returns after his departure, draining the receptionist's life force and assuming a new disguise to return to the underworld. Beetlejuice encounters Wolf Jackson once more. Jackson shows him Dolores' picture and asks if he knows who she is. Beetlejuice, trying to avoid the subject, feigns ignorance, but the reality soon surfaces. Dolores is his former spouse. During a flashback to Italy, Beetlejuice recounts to Dolores the tale of his sentencing to a life amongst the dead. During a bleak and ominous evening, their paths crossed, and he became instantly captivated by her gaze. They married in a traditional ceremony, but unbeknownst to Beetlejuice, his beautiful bride harbored a dark secret. She was the leader of a deadly cult. With the meticulousness of a spider weaving its intricate web, Dolores had ensnared him, her intentions sinister. To achieve immortality, she needed 2 vital components, his life force and his very essence. Despite Beetlejuice's admitted eccentricities, he possessed boundaries that ultimately caused their separation. During Charles's funeral, Rory attempts to reconcile with Astrid, but she rejects his efforts, criticizing her mother's naivete for remaining with him and asserting that he is merely exploiting her. However, she clarifies that it concerns Lydia, not herself. In Winter River, after Charles's passing, the haunted house adopts a melancholic atmosphere, appearing almost as lifeless as he is. Numerous individuals are currently keen on acquiring the iconic estate. During his address, Rory reminisced about Charles's unwavering desire to embrace life and chase his passions. Spurred by the moment, he impulsively proposes to Lydia, suggesting a Halloween wedding, a mere 2 days hence. Rory declares he wishes to share his future with her. As Lydia wavers, he observes that amidst the pervasive grief, their love feels equally lifeless. Following considerable deliberation, Lydia kisses him, a gesture Rory misconstrues as consent, prompting a family celebration while a visibly distraught Astrid angrily departs on her bicycle. Consumed by distraction and mounting frustration, Astrid triggered a traffic jam, barely averted a collision, and eventually careened into a neighbor's fence. Jeremy, a young man, assists her to her feet, inquiring as to her presence in Winter River. SD states her support for Charles before transitioning to a discussion about her own father. She clarifies that he possessed a free spirit and left her mother after opting to relocate to Brazil, the nation where her mother had spent her entire life. Ultimately, she discloses that her mother is Lydia Dietz, substantiating the familial discord and the enduring impact of past traumas. In the spectral depths of Erie, afterlife agent Wolf Jackson is alarmed by a disturbing report. Dolores has unleashed her vengeance, rampaging relentlessly in her quest to find Beetlejuice. Her escalating mayhem necessitates locating Beetlejuice before she does. Always opportunistic, Beetlejuice scans the newspaper and notices Lydia Dietz's name mentioned in the article about Charles's passing. He instantly seizes upon the tragedy as a golden opportunity to re-engage with the realm of the living. Adam too was instructed to place several boxes in the attic for storage. During her explorations, she discovers a scale replica of the Winter River. Within the simulation, she stumbles upon a peculiar advertisement promising communication with Beetlejuice. Upon closer inspection, she uncovers a box marked Richard and discovers faded photographs of her parents tucked away within. At that precise moment, Lydia entered the attic. A bittersweet blend of nostalgia and pain flickered in the eyes of the mother and daughter as they looked at the photos together. However, upon noticing the Beetlejuice advertisement, Lydia's face transforms. With rising panic, she cautions Azra about the dire repercussions of uttering Beetlejuice's name thrice and strictly prohibits her return to the attic. Following the incident, Lydia finds solace in Delia's company. She shares that navigating the tension with ASD is reminiscent of earlier conflicts with her stepmother. Despite their past disagreements, Lydia recalls the unsettling Beetlejuice commercial that ASD discovered, before confessing she hasn't resumed seeing Beetlejuice. Frustrated and seeking an outlet, ASD heads to Jeremy's room. He's a boy she recently befriended. Jeremy shares his collection of records and books with her, sparking a deeper conversation about their personal lives. Jeremy confided that he's been struggling with family troubles. His father suffered an accident and has since fallen into a devastating pattern of alcohol abuse. Recognizing her empathy, ASD understands that her father's body was never recovered, resulting in an enduring sense of loss. Jeremy hoped his girlfriend's mother, a psychic, could contact him, but ASD reported the failed attempt and the psychic's inability to connect. The conversation takes a new turn when Lydia's Halloween wedding plans come up. Perhaps, Jeremy offered gently, a day together filled with pizza and fun could help ease her isolation. Rory is excitedly planning a lavish wedding, while Lydia envisions a smaller, more personal affair. However, what truly torments her isn't the wedding preparations, but the persistent, unsettling appearances of Beetlejuice that seem to shadow her every move. Finally reaching her breaking point, Lydia flees to the attic in desperation, screaming at Beetlejuice to leave her in peace. Concerned about her increasingly strange behavior, Rory trails her to the attic and inquires about what's happening. Lydia, drained and desperate, resolves to reveal the truth about Beetlejuice to Rory, admitting he's not merely a memory, but a present danger. Haunted by a past she long suppressed, Lydia tentatively reveals everything to Rory, shedding the teenage fears that still weighed heavily on her. She tells of a malevolent demon who, alluding to the previous film's incidents, tormented her family and attempted to coerce her into marriage as a means of resurrecting himself. Now free from that ordeal, she feels haunted by the demon's renewed torment. Her voice trembling, she warns Rory that uttering his name thrice will summon Beetlejuice again. With grim resolve, he speaks the forbidden incantation, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. In a flash, they materialized inside Beetlejuice's bizarre office. Much to their astonishment, Beetlejuice presents his offspring, a bizarre being utterly unlike himself, heightening the already dreamlike atmosphere. Overcome with terror, Lydia desperately repeats home 3 times as Rory collapses, instantly transporting them from Beetlejuice's office back to the Winter River model. Beetlejuice croons a love ballad, attempting to charm Lydia from his miniature realm. Rory, bewildered by the recent events, dismissed them as a dream or mass delusion and resolved to move on. They depart, despite Lydia remaining profoundly disturbed by the events. Terrified and enraged, Lydia urgently informs her stepmother, Delia, and the Afterlife Services Department that they must evacuate the house at once and obliterate the miniature town, as it serves as a conduit to Beetlejuice. However, Astrid, despite having plans with Jeremy, pleads with her to stay, pressing them to remain for a while longer. As Astrid Awareness Day approached, she and Jeremy discussed their costumes, as they had planned to go trick-or-treating together on Halloween. Jeremy confesses somberly that he would prefer to remain home with her. Their intimate kiss abruptly transforms into a supernatural event as they levitate. Terrified, Astrid shrinks back, demanding to know Jeremy's true nature, now realizing he is far from ordinary. To his dismay, he confesses his spectral nature. Jeremy recounts a past incident where, while stealing beers from his father, he tragically fell from a treehouse and perished instantly years ago. Since that time, he has remained confined to the house, his movements restricted to the vicinity of the tree. But upon meeting Astrid, everything shifted. She finally saw him, a phenomenon previously unknown. Though he confesses his true affection and desire for a life together, a profound inner turmoil compels him to declare their union impossible, citing his death and her continued existence as insurmountable barriers. With unwavering resolve, Jeremy confided that a path existed for them to be together, yet he cautioned her against informing her mother. To compensate her assistance, Jeremy assures Astrid a final meeting with her father for a last farewell. Anxiously trying to appear nonchalant, Lydia mentioned to a friend that she had dropped Astrid off on Jefferson Street, not revealing her lingering safety concerns. Her friend instantly responded with concern, mentioning that particular street had always felt unsettling, especially considering the infamous murder house at number 125, the very location where Lydia abandoned Astrid, remained unsold. The friend discloses that, 23 years prior, Jeremy had been a menace. After Jeremy murdered his parents, he fled to his treehouse to evade arrest. During his desperate attempt to flee, he suffered a fatal fall, succumbing to a broken neck upon impact. Driven by panic, Lydia sprints towards Jeremy's house, desperately trying to save Astrid. Unbeknownst to Jeremy, he guides Astrid toward a door shrouded in mystery and unforeseen consequences. Astrid recites a spell Jeremy gave her, and they both cross into the world of the dead. Lydia was unable to prevent them from leaving. The door clicked shut. Delia, Lydia's stepmother, is struggling with profound grief following Charles's death and curating an art exhibit as a cathartic expression of her sorrow. Tragically, the snakes she used, purchased under the false pretense they were harmless, were not. Astrid, reeling from recent events, understands her sole recourse is seeking Beetlejuice's assistance, and she brings Jeremy's book, searching for answers within its pages. Beetlejuice exposes Jeremy's deception, revealing he manipulated Astrid into exchanging her life for his, condemning her to a one-way journey to the afterlife. In a desperate attempt to rescue her daughter, Lydia reluctantly agrees to Beetlejuice's dark proposal. Marriage, the only way to halt his ex-wife Dolores' relentless pursuit. Though repulsed by the deal's implications, Lydia consents. To rescue Astrid, she signs the pact, whereupon Beetlejuice conjures a portal to the netherworld, whisking Lydia away. In their rush, however, they neglected to shut the door, enabling lost spirits from beyond to infiltrate the haunted house and unleash utter pandemonium. Simultaneously, within the realm of the deceased, Wolf Jackson is notified of a significant infraction, Code 699, signaling the unauthorized entry of a living person into the underworld. He dispatches his agents without delay to locate Beetlejuice and Lydia. Delia, having passed away, materializes in the passport area of the afterlife as Astrid starts experiencing an unusual sensation. Jeremy confessed he'd tricked her. The spell she'd cast had exchanged her life for his own. Subsequently, the afterlife's agents escort Astrid for exchange processing, while Jeremy proceeds to Window 11 to have his soul officially stamped, a necessary step to finalize the life transfer. Amidst all of this, Astrid catches sight of her father, Richard, hidden in the shadows. Simultaneously, Beetlejuice and Lydia reach the depot that transitions to the afterlife at the point of death. They bolted towards the emergency exit, unexpectedly finding themselves in a bizarre desert landscape where the planet Saturn loomed in the distance as they desperately sought escape. Suddenly, an odd creature begins to stalk them, but at that moment, Richard, Astrid's father, arrives. He assures them that despite his invisibility, he has always watched over them, and promises to facilitate their escape, conditional on their prior success in restoring Astrid's life in a different location. Wolf Jackson learned the spectral gatekeepers had found and secured the breach in the haunted house. Despite this, Beetlejuice and Lydia remain at large, although Bob, Beetlejuice's most devoted minion, was apprehended for questioning. Stranded in the afterlife, Delia frantically seeks Beetlejuice's assistance. He consents, but only if she assists him in completing his marriage to Lydia, considering Lydia's flight to rescue her daughter. Lydia, Astrid, and Richard arrive at last, seemingly too late to undo the life exchange, but Beetlejuice, as crafty as ever, is waiting. Showing no mercy, he consigns Jeremy to hell, thereby ensuring the original pact between Jeremy and Lydia remains valid. Lydia and Astrid cheated death, arriving just in time to prevent the wedding. Upon inquiring about Delia, they uncover the heartbreaking reality. Lydia's stepmother remains deceased due to the snake's poison. Beetlejuice is exploiting her ghostly form in his manipulative scheme. Beetlejuice proceeds to remind everyone of Lydia's signed contract, compelling her to follow through on her vow to marry him before Rory and a collection of influencers he has assembled as witnesses. After Beetlejuice injects Rory with truth serum, Rory admits to everyone his sole motivation for marrying Lydia was her wealth. He further discloses his former fiancée had not died, but instead embarked on a retreat with exploitative intentions toward other women. Furious, Lydia employs a Beetlejuice-provided boxing glove to strike Rory, exposing his real form. In a swift act, Beetlejuice banished the influencer guests, pulling them into their phones. He proceeds to coerce the priest into performing his ideal wedding ceremony with Lydia, punctuated by his personalized rendition of MacArthur Park, imbued with his signature macabre flair. A palpable tension fills the haunted house as Wolf Jackson arrives with dramatic flair. Towering and radiant in his ghostly armor, Wolf commands his formidable legion of spectral soldiers. "Beetle, is that you?" Wolf bellows, his voice echoing thunderously. "Pursuant to a decree from the High Court of the Afterlife, you are hereby placed under arrest." Beetlejuice, seemingly in command until that moment, pivoted slowly, a wicked grin now spreading across his face. "You're arriving quite late, aren't you?" Beetlejuice, with a flick of his wrist, released a surge of shadowy power. Their stiff postures give them the appearance of immobile statues. With a strained face, Wolf struggles against the enchantment before finally succumbing, his eyes retaining a frozen, furious fire. "Do you have any further strategies you're concealing, pal?" Beetlejuice cackles, pirouetting around the frozen soldiers and taunting them. However, his moment of triumph is cut short as the room's temperature plummets. A familiar figure emerges from the shadows, one Beetlejuice knows all too well. Dolores, his former wife, possessed a lethal grace. "Beetlejuice," she says, her voice a sharp dagger, as she advances with deadly calm. "This game has stretched on for an excessive amount of time. You must now accompany me permanently." Beetlejuice's grin falters slightly. With each step she took, the shadows deepened and coiled around her like tendrils, as if the underworld was drawing her into its embrace. Overcome by utter desperation, Beetlejuice starts to retreat, frantically seeking any means of escape from what was coming. In another part of the mansion, Astrid and Delia desperately flipped through the spellbook, driven by sheer panic. In a frenzy, they leafed through the book until discovering the required spell. Delia's hands shook, fueled by an unwavering resolve to rescue her granddaughter. As the individual with Astrid loudly recited the words, a palpable shift occurred in the room's atmosphere. A gigantic being, the same one that previously threatened Astrid and her mother, arose from the dimensional desert's depths. With a ferocious roar, the beast pounced upon Dolores and Rory, its jaws clamping down on them as it dragged the pair into the afterlife. Having escaped Dolores's grasp and reverted to his former mischievous self, Beetlejuice once again focuses on Lydia, eager to finally take her as his own. He is ready to marry her, finalizing his scheme, but Astrid intervenes before he can proceed, resolved to thwart him. Her stern gaze underscored the gravity of his infraction. Code 699, which strictly prohibits the living from unauthorized incursions into the afterlife. If he violated that stipulation, any contract signed with Lydia would be rendered null. Beetlejuice was rendered speechless. With a wave of relief, Lydia finally seizes control of the situation. "Honestly, Beetlejuice, 6 centuries is far too long to wait for someone of my caliber," she stated, her voice firm and unwavering. "The hour has come for your departure." With a grave expression, she intones the dreaded words, "Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice." With a surge of manic power, Beetlejuice starts to dissolve, his form contorting and crumbling in a spectacular implosion. In the end, mere specks of dust lingered, floating in the air. Lydia and Astrid shared a knowing look, understanding they were finally free from the threat that had plagued them for so long. As the deep freeze relents, Wolf Jackson, unbound at last, swiftly rises, shaking off the lingering chill. With his authority still absolute, he approached Delia. Now that Beetlejuice is gone, he confirms Delia's permanent residence in the afterlife, her demise from the non-defanged snakes being irreversible. There was no transient resurgence. Lydia and Astrid resign themselves to this conclusion, understanding Delia is now where she belongs. With a gentle wave and serene smile, Wolf Jackson leaves Delia, crossing over to the afterlife, her last moments spent saying goodbye to Lydia and Astrid. It's not a sorrowful farewell, but a reunion with her lifelong love. Lydia returns to her psychic television program in the film's closing scene, mirroring its opening. However, at the climax of the performance, she directly addresses the audience, shattering the fourth wall, and declares her departure from the production to prioritize her personal life and family, seeking respite from the perpetual link to the supernatural realm. Subsequently, we observe an object. Lydia appears to be sleeping in her bed. In the fleeting instant before consciousness returned, we glimpsed Beetlejuice beside her, grinning with wicked delight. Awakening abruptly, she finds herself alone in the bed. The dream's unsettling speed made it difficult to discern whether it was a mere nightmare or an indication that Beetlejuice's threat lingered. Thus, the film concludes, presenting viewers with this brief, disturbing scene and the lingering question: is Beetlejuice gone forever, or merely biding his time for another comeback? Are we expecting him back?